I dealt with these themes and the genre because basically it's kind of talking about my childhood in Zambia and how I grew up, and it's very close to my heart. And the thing I always say is, when I was in, and the thing I think people don't necessarily understand about Zambia is, when you're a child, or when I was growing up at least, I dealt with lots of very serious problems such as poverty and things like AIDS, but it didn't by any way affect my quality of growing up. Even though I was surrounded by death and such issues, it's still, I still grew up like a normal child. I had things to say, I was very imaginative, and I was very happy and content, and it's really, I feel very lucky and blessed. So I wanted to kind of show this to people, how kids deal with death somehow. Yeah, this is really why I chose that subject. Okay, the things I wanted to show. There are many themes in the short film in a very short space of time. Whether you see it, I'm not sure, but it's how people deal with death and loss, and lots of things like, no matter what things come to you in life, the idea that or things that come to kids in life, the idea that they move on and they create this world of imagination and they still have fun, and the thing about Zambia is, like, it's a cycle of very terrible things happening and unfortunate things, but you see people very happy. We're not at home depressed and thinking about where our lives are going. People move on, people have a sense of humor. They even have a sense of humor about very dark subjects, you know, because otherwise you go mad, you know. We all have lost people in our lives to AIDS, especially. I've lost members of my family to AIDS, and but we don't dwell on it, and kind of, I want the audience to know that we're not sitting around thinking how sad we are, and we're not dependent. We're kind of proactive and love life and live life to the full. Whether it's a good subject to cover, I'm not sure. I want people to judge that for themselves. Yeah, it's like I said, in Zambia, I think at one point it's become less this idea, but in the actual film, what I don't say is the father actually died from AIDS, and so it's really talking about the context of that, and particular to village life. I chose village life just because I was more interested than talking about city life, and people haven't seen village life necessarily. So it's yeah, it's within that context. So even because I also work for a charity in Zambia, and they deal with a charity with women who have lost their partners to AIDS, the virus. So I took a lot of influence from that. So it's within that context that this kind of story is played out in. Yeah. Everything went wrong. Everything that you can think of went wrong in shooting. Zambia does not have a film infrastructure. Unlike South Africa or Kenya, Zambia does not have a film infrastructure. So even the government, there's no funding. There's funding from NGOs, but if you're dealing with a particular subject, and if I had brought the subject of AIDS more forward, I think I would have got more funding. But I deliberately didn't want to, because I didn't want it to take over the film. I didn't want that. I wanted it to be subtle and more about positivity, kind of. So what happened is, because there is no infrastructure, you kind of have to do everything from scratch. And I had to fly film people from the UK, Germany, Russia, and to come in, and they were kind of heads of departments, and they would train the people from Zambia. So I got a team of people from Zambia who I interviewed, and I found myself, who have done other things, and they got trained in film. So a lot of them had never stepped on a film set in their lives, and we had to train them to do that. So that was the first difficulty. Then it's just, you have to prepare for everything to go wrong. Anything that you think can't go wrong, it will. And even casting, we don't have casting agents, we don't have agencies. So to get our children, we auditioned about 400 children, all going to different schools, different areas, anywhere where we could get a bunch of kids together. We interviewed them ourselves and had to go through take pictures, and also sorts advertising, get ourselves known, and also yeah, there's just a lack of understanding for film. So even support, the little support the government can give, like just transportation, we had to fight to get it and tell them it has to be there on time, because sometimes the driver wouldn't be there on time. Sometimes they didn't even have petrol, and we had to pay for the petrol. So everything that can go wrong went wrong. But in the end, I think I'm kind of happy. Also shooting, for example, started late. Like we would start 11 and finish at 6, and this is not a shoot day. It's not. But it's just because we have to organize everyone, and people have to be on time, and there are great distances in Zambia, and people don't have money to take transportation. If you ask them, come here at this time, they can't. A lot of them don't have money to do that, so we have to pick everyone up, and it's just the coordination was very, very difficult. But we did it. Yeah. The biggest problem, like I said before, was is the subject of AIDS. For sure, it is the biggest thing that affects our country and that stifles us to every level. Because I think, because we've lost, I think, practically a whole generation to AIDS, I find that the next generation has been affected by that. Not just because of the loss, but it affects everything. It affects your mindset. And I think in Zambia we have a very short-termism, because also the average lifespan is something like 35, which is insane. In Europe, if you had an average lifespan of expectancy of 35 to 38, it's incredibly insane. So people are very short-term, and they don't necessarily think in long-term about the future, because they're not sure about their futures. So yeah, so that's a huge problem, I think. At a local level, like, yeah, for example, yeah, AIDS at the local level in the village that we work in, what happens is you have women heading the house, and that's okay, that's fine, because they kind of get on with it, which I find. They're very proactive, the women, and they find different ways. The good thing about Zambia is the women in trade are not looked down on. There's a level of equality, and so a lot of people are dealing with being widows and being proactive. A lot of my aunts are widows, and actually from when they became widows, they were kind of considered wives, and after they lost their husbands, they became very proactive. So one of my aunts came from becoming a housewife essentially to becoming, now she's a member of parliament. She's very proactive, and she moved up. She went to get herself educated. She did much more than when she was dependent on her partner. And at a national, was it national level? Local level, international level. Yeah, at an international level, I think this subject affects everyone. I think it affects everyone. I think and I think living in because I live in UK as well, and living in Zambia, I see the different approaches to AIDS. I think it's not, people don't think it's so much of a problem, for example, in UK. I think it's incredible, the statistics, for example. I wonder why there isn't a higher AIDS level in UK, but the statistics, people use unprotected sex. The thing that people mostly talk about is either catching gonorrhea or getting pregnant. No one thinks about AIDS, and AIDS is always in my mind. Like, how can you have unprotected sex? People have one-night stands, and it's like, yeah, I'll take the morning after pill. The level of ignorance is incredible, because they don't see it in front of them. I think people are worried about other subjects like cancer, but yeah, I think it's something that the West needs to kind of take more seriously. Yeah. There's no easy way, because I think, especially in Zambia, people have tried, and everywhere people have tried to change this horrible phenomenon. I think it's working to a certain extent, but it's so difficult, and I couldn't really say as a filmmaker. I think there are different approaches to take, and for example, government tried everything, tried giving condoms for free, for example, and they tried educating people about the subject, either through ads, or you have NGOs sponsoring things that promote sexual awareness or sexual protection, and it's getting better. Like the levels are getting better, but I don't know what the answer is. If I was a politician, if I could wave a magic wand, I could, but I'm not sure how you can educate people on it, because even I know cousins who have lost uncles or whoever to AIDS, but are like still using unprotected sex. I don't know how you stop that. I have no idea. Sorry. Couple of ideas that I would, yeah, a couple of ideas I would debate. I don't know. I think it would be nice to debate people's approach or attitude towards the subject. I'd like people to debate the attitude they have as well towards Zambia or Africa in general. I'd like to see what people's idea they have, because I think people are also very ignorant about what happens on the level. As much as we know, I think we know about the negative sides, and I know I've been talking about AIDS, but I'd like to see really, one of the things I'd like to debate is the way the West kind of view Africa in a way, and yeah, just to see how we can change how people view us and the ideas they have of us.